corruption isn't the only factor on the report. It deals with homicide rates, unemployment rates. David, do you think corruption goes hand in hand with these other categories that are leading to South Africa being the second most stressed out country in the world?
Well, it does. But I mean, if you look at that report, we score very badly on homicide rates, levels of inequality and unemployment, and we're like in the middle of the indices on corruption. We're not by no means the worst country in the world as far as corruption goes, but where inequality, homicide rates, and unemployment rates we are damn close to being near the bottom of any index. So I don't doubt that those are the largest contributors to stress. It's a strange measure to use, but they're probably the largest contributors to stress. Corruption is a large contributor to stress because you don't know, in a society or a system that is set with corruption, you don't know what the rules of the game are. So you don't know if in order to get a house you have to follow the set procedure for applying for an RDP house, or if you have to bribe the person who allocates the house, or how much you have to bribe, or whether somebody will come along after you've paid a bribe and pay a larger bribe than you have, and you lose both your bribe and you don't get the house. So I have no doubt that it contributes very much to levels of stress, particularly of ordinary people. And the thing about corruption, which I think is an indirect, again, contributor to stress, and like inequality, for example, which is another measure that is used here, is that it massively reduces trust particularly in the government, in the public sector, in politicians, to some extent also in the leaders of the private sector. And really, when you don't trust the people who are at the institutions that are delivering your sanitation, your houses, your security, of baking your bread, of building your roads, that's a pretty stressful situation to be in, because you don't, you don't have a sense that you're looked after by people that you trust to look after you. And that's where I think corruption comes into the equation most overwhelmingly. But as I say, on the four measures used here, interestingly, corruption is the one we're probably, as I say, in the middle of the global scales. The other three, we're like close to the bottom of the global scales. I mean, the homicide rates are shocking, and the inequality, which is well known, is almost unmatched by any other country. So I think these are the real big strengths. But corruption contributes to each of those measures to one degree or another as well.
Johan, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think what stood out for me about the report was the unemployment rate as well, of 25% in the country.
Yeah.
And then for me that stood out, that can be connected to high levels of stress as well, is the life expectancy, which is in South Africa at the moment they rate it as 58 years old. Wow. It's only this is second lowest. 58 years old in that report. If you compare to the country that scored the highest, Norway, it was 81 years old. I think 85, 81. And America is 81 years old, and then it goes down. But 58, for me, that was shocking.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at stress then, yes, stress definitely leads to anxiety. Stress, if it's not attended to, it can lead to physical health being compromised, high blood pressure, heart attacks. So it definitely is worrying for me, and that's for me that stood out about the report.
Well, in your experience with your patients, what are some of the more common factors that lead to anxiety and stress?
Yeah. Well, it can either be personal related or work related. What I see mostly in the practice is changes in the environment, whether it's at home or at work. For example, at home, if you're going through a divorce, then, or if someone died, or if you've been involved in any trauma, it leads to high levels of stress.
Yeah.
At work, stress related at work can be for any changes at work. We hear many people is actually losing their employment, the fear of the unknown, uncertainty.
Yeah.
It got mentioned with corruption, uncertainty, and it compromises your trust in the system. It also then leads to higher levels of stress. So it's both. It's work-related and personal-related. The danger is if it's left untreated or unattended, it leads then to anxiety. I see a number of high levels of anxiety disorders coming through the practice. Panic attacks, panic disorders, and then depression as well. It's all linked to high levels of stress.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the high unemployment rate at 25%.
Yeah.
How does this lead to stress? How does this develop into stress in your experience?
Yeah. Well, if you don't have work, you don't have income. Especially if you have dependents, people that you have to look after, care for, it creates a whole cycle of stress. If you get up in the morning and you know that there's no money to actually provide to your basic needs of food, and if there's a fear of actually losing your household as well, your security, your house, then it all leads to higher levels of stress. Yeah.
So how do you move forward? Is the solution to see a clinical psychologist? That's not always an option for some of these people, especially if they have high unemployment rates. Maybe they don't have a job they can't afford. How do you move forward if you're experiencing anxiety or stress?
I think the important thing is to be self-reflective and to help people around you as well. The thing about stress, it causes people to close off. We all know the feeling of feeling stressed. What does it feel like? You can actually feel it in your tummy, it's closed off. So it's about to know when you're stressed and do something about it. We all know, we've all had stressful days. When you get to a robot and the car turns in front of you out of a sudden and you lose it for that moment, you know, I normally know that my levels of stress are quite high. It's all about work-life balance, looking at doing something to get the stress levels down, whether it's doing exercises, speaking to professional people, or just to friends as well about your high stress levels.
So if we can't solve it as a country, we definitely can work on ourselves and our communities and start there to work on this bigger problem.